All right. Well, that was fun.
Hey, we adapt, right? We adapt and
Yeah.
just keep going.
Yeah. What in the world? So general, and I'll of course edit this out and all that, but general idea behind Legendary Project is just really interviewing people that I have a lot of respect for, um, and learn your story, kind of voice your story out to the marketplace of people. It's not so much. Like industry or anything like that. It's more just kind of thought provoking and those kind of things. And then of course we'll
Cool.
touch on our professional backgrounds and that kind of stuff. But for me, it's just kind of paying homage to people that I respect and getting into that piece of it and learning the story and providing value to the people that listen and those kind of things. So
Let's do it, man. Make
you
it
ready?
about, I always say, make it about whoever's listening and try to
Yeah.
inspire and equip them. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
in. I'm here for it.
All right, what's up, guys? This is the Legendary Project. This is going to be episode 5. I've got somebody that I have become good friends with over the years in social media, and we've kind of reconnected and have been bromancing a little bit over the last couple of weeks. I would say it's my buddy Brian, and what's really cool about this is we are at different mortgage companies in our professional life, but we're coming together and just want to kind of share some content and add another episode to the project. We're going to be collaborating on some content over the next couple of weeks, and then I'm going to go up there and do an in person with him at his studio, and yeah, so it's going to be good. So Brian, introduce yourself. I know there's a lot of people that know you and follow you, but I think that we have found that we're kind of cut from a similar cloth from a thought mentality and those kind of
Yeah,
things. So yeah, I'm glad you're here.
dude, glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Mike, and congrats on the fifth episode. I was just talking to somebody when I started my show, years ago, almost right before COVID, is when we had our first 3 episodes done, and then the world changed, and still going. So I love it. So kudos to you for doing this because a lot of people never initiate and get into it. But for those that don't know me, I love to start with this. Is I got married to my bride Nicole. We've been married 23 years this year, and we've got 3 amazing kids. Presley's our oldest, about to go off to college. She's a senior in high school. Davis is a sophomore, and then our youngest Henry is 9 in the third grade. And so that is the majority of my focus, my time, my legacy, all the things that I do really are to take care of the family. And I happen to be in the mortgage business for 23 years, which if you'd
Yep.
asked me how I got into that was not necessarily intentional, which I'm sure we probably have some similar stories there, and we'll touch on that. But I love to work out. You'll probably see some of that. Huge soccer fan, and just blessed to get to do a lot of cool things in my life, and I've got to meet some amazing people. And I'm still on the journey myself. Constant learner, constant student, and looking to level up my leadership every day. And these conversations are where those kind of things happen.
So how did that happen? Like, how did you actually get into the mortgage world? Like, what prompted you there? Because like I'm in a very similar place. At 18, if you would have told me that I would at 31 be running a division, running kind of my own private label mortgage company, I'd have been like, what the heck does that even mean?
Yeah, what is that? Dude, my stories, it's wild. I played soccer, D1 at University of Memphis, and I went and played a little bit of ball afterwards here in Nashville in the USL for soccer. And when I came back, I promised my parents I'd finish my degree. So I came back to University of Memphis, and I was finishing that. Go Tigers, by the way. And nobody would hire me. Literally in 2000, I'm coming back into this, and no one would hire me. And so I go back, I
Huh.
finish my degree, and I'm doing interns. I got my coaching license. So I'm coaching on the side, helping my dad, who's a psychiatrist, psychologist, and helping him with some of his business stuff. I'm just trying to find a job. And when I say no one would hire me, is like nobody would hire me. I had worked retail before and sold men's clothes and all that, which used to be Structure, now Express for people that know that. I'd had some odd ends jobs, but I just went into coaching, and I thought, well, maybe I'm going to be a coach. But I always had this desire to get into financial services. I loved those classes. I had a great teacher in high school that taught us, investing with Warren Buffett. And so I thought, well, I'm going to wear a suit. I'm going to go to the bank, and I'm going to like have this job. That's what I had envisioned, but no one would hire me. So I go to this career fair. I'll never forget, those that know the consumer finance division. I was at Wells Fargo Financial, which super sexy and exciting. Those that don't know, we were in a strip center. We would help you finance your furniture. for zero payment, zero interest for like 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is. And then we would make all these cold calls and try to upsell you on credit cards, debt consolidations, personal loans, auto loans. If we got really lucky, you owned a home, maybe we could help you do a big debt consolidation, put all of your debts into one, typically higher interest rates to help people manage it. But man, that's how I got in the business. Spent almost a year there before I switched over to the mortgage side at Wells, and spent 13 years at Wells Fargo just learning the game. But I share this with people is, Mike, what I learned was credit, income, assets, underwriting, processing, selling. I had to do all of it. And I had a
Mhm.
great mentor at the time, Ken Ford, and he helped me get out of this like very much shy. Like I didn't know what to do. I was an athlete, so I had some confidence, but I had no idea how to sell. I had no idea about credit. Couldn't read credit reports, didn't understand assets, didn't understand how to calculate income. I learned that at a very high level outside of Memphis. Those of you that don't know, a lot of bankruptcies, a lot of credit challenges. And so I'm thankful because I got to start off learning the game from an early standpoint the right way. I think that was part of my success is I learned from that point, man. You got to learn how to sell. You got to be great on the phones. You got to be willing to make the calls. And then you got to know what you're doing when it comes to the actual credit, income, and assets, actually putting a loan together, which
Yeah.
we'll just say in our industry is not always thought of as important.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a saying that not all loan officers are created equal.
Amen.
And it is definitely true in learning through the career path. Like I was an athlete too, and coming out of athletics, like you're competitive, like you want to be competitive, you want to really push the envelope. And whenever I got into my career, I went into a lot of that with that much gumption, and found out pretty quickly, like, all right, I need to be a little bit more calculated at times. I need to be a little bit more strategic, and learning these things, and getting really good at it. And and I think being in the mortgage business definitely taught me. I think it sets you up for life more than most businesses, because you do learn a lot about a lot of different financial type of setups, a lot of different things. But it also teaches you a lot of patience because you have to deal with a lot of different humans. I think that I'm a better dad because I'm in the mortgage business, because I've definitely learned to have a lot more patience, especially dealing with kind of coaching and recruiting and servicing loan officers. That's I know you know that, like, that's not always the easiest thing to do. But yeah, no, it's similar to you. I've got two small kids, 6 and 2, and that's of course very time consuming and a large part of my life right now. Um, and I think there are a lot of parallels, and we've talked about it on other episodes too, of just what we do as a career, whether it be sales coaching or operationally in the mortgage business, and parenting, and being a good husband, and a lot of those things. And one thing that I have noticed about you is, at least from the outside looking in, it looks like communication is a big thing for you, and I think it has to be in a lot of what we do. So, where do you think it came from your mentor, or what was your upbringing like to get to a place where kind of communication and being straightforward and those kind of things became such an important part of your life?
I'm still on the journey, man. I'll tell you, I was listening to this podcast and Ed Milet, been a great mentor and all of that. And Ed was sharing this podcast. If he was to have one skill, right? He could have one skill. You had to pick out of all the different options that he would be able to be great at, to go back and build WFG, build out what he's done with his coaching and a lot of the things
Yeah.
that he's been so successful. He's like, it would be communication, the ability to persuade and influence and impact people to make decisions that are in the best interest of them. Not the old school of, hey, I'm trying to sell you to do something you don't need
Yeah.
just because I need a sale. Not that. Set that aside. That's not what I'm talking about. It's communication and the ability to influence and persuade people based on what you believe your conviction is that you can help and serve somebody. Whether that's helping them buy their first home or investment property in our world, that kind of stuff, or it's just simply helping somebody improve in an area of their life, to get a coach, to work on their communication. Look, Mike, I wish I could tell you like I always had that stuff figured out. Like I was fortunate. I was captain of our high school team my last 2 years, captain of our college team, University of Memphis, my last 2 years. And that was all voted on by the players. And so I was kind of pushed into this spot where at an early age, I had to learn how to get along with people, especially in college. People are coming in, they're graduating. You got new classes every year with freshmen. You got transfers coming in. I remember our coach, I was a goalkeeper. He was always like, hey, on the field, Covey, you got to be the one that's communicating, calling the plays, letting people know where we're out of position. You got to organize a wall if it's a free kick. On corner kicks, you got to make sure you have everybody set where they need to go. So I do think a large part of, I was fortunate in that I was in roles like that. But let me just tell you, like, not all of that translated to the business world, like
No.
at all. Several years ago, I went and I connected with Rene Rodriguez, which I know we know in our industry is probably the go-to guy. And I remember telling Renee, I've got this huge speaking opportunity. And John Maxwell was heading it up. And I'm one of the smaller speakers, on the second or third day. I'm scared to death. I mean, literally, bro, I'm like, this is not something I'm prepared for at
Yeah,
all.
this escalated quickly.
Yeah, I'm like, first real speaking. I've spoke at MBA events. I've spoke with our teams. I've spoke to high schools, like my college alumni. I go back, like this is real deal. Like these people are paid to do this. This is like somebody coming in and wanting to play soccer with me. And they're like, oh yeah, I played a little bit when I was in high school or something. Like different level. So
Yeah.
I went out and hired Renee, and I remember going through his class, met some amazing people there, and I realized in that moment how much I didn't know, how much I
Hmm.
needed to improve. And like athletes like us, I'm sure you know this feeling is when you get in that situation, you're like, okay, I'm not good yet. And then
Yeah.
this drive was in me of, okay, how do I get good? And I started studying people like the Ed Milet's, the John Maxwell's, the Rene Rodriguez's out there. I'm going, who's great at this that I can model and understand how they get there? And I'll tell you, I'm still in that journey. I'm speaking again, interesting enough, this weekend in Atlanta at that same conference. They invited me back. So Maxwell's going to be headlining again and some other really amazing speakers. And what I know, Mike, is while I'm not going to judge myself against them, I am looking at where I was and the people that were there 3 years ago. Are they going to see a difference in my life? And how can I impact that audience differently based on what I've learned? And so I'm
Yeah.
super excited to be able to deliver that message to them of where I think we all can learn and grow. And I align with Ed on this is communication in my marriage, communication with my kids, communication in recruiting, communication in running our mortgage company.
Yeah.
All know, if you ever worked for a bad communicator or someone that doesn't communicate at all, it's horrible.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
don't want to be that type of leader. And so I'm gonna continually improve every day, man. Just a little bit every day.
Yeah, and that's something that if somebody could have shook me like 6 years ago, like just like taking me by the head and just shaking me, I would totally agree. You get incrementally better every day, and for the early part of my career, I was just the worst communicator that there was, mainly in my personal life. I was an over communicator in my career,
Wow.
which kept people around me, and I was closing a lot of loans, but then the worst communicator in my personal life. And honestly, like there's been times, I met my wife in high school, and we've been together ever since, and I've not been the greatest to her over that period of time, and have made mistakes and have done things early on in our relationship that weren't what my character actually is, and
Mhm.
being able to kind of look in the mirror and figure that out about yourself is really cool. And I think that one thing that you and I resonate on is like the second we think that we arrived is the second that like we need to we're getting taken out of this business, and we might as well hang it up. And Tom Brady was real big about that kind of stuff. That's why I see him as like one of the ultimate competitors. Is it was not that it was never good enough. He's probably of that mentality, but he's one of those people where if I'm not getting better every day, then I'm not doing what I need to do in life. And I think that's where a lot of people get sidetracked is, hey, I'm going to go give all of this value. And then what I resonate with you is I'm going to go give all this value, but I'm not going to act like I am the source. I'm not going to act like I'm some person that like knows everything. I'm just going to fail forward with you and share my experiences in those moments, and hopefully somebody around me gets something from that. And I
Mhm.
see that a lot in your content and kind of the way that you speak, and that's why it resonates with me. Is that is, in my opinion, the only mentality. I think if you get to a place to where you're sharing because you think that you are the only knowledge base, number one, that's not biblical. Number two, that's a really slippery slope to go down. And I found myself from an ego standpoint being in those situations through the years, and I'm like, uh-oh, uh yeah, you think you know everything, and I might know everything guidelines. I am confident about that, but I do still learn things that I can't just sit there and be like, ah, I know everything, and this is why you should listen to me. And we know all of those, like, we run in very similar spheres when it comes. I'm not on the coaching circuit yet, but like, we run in very similar circles when it comes to those people, and we all know those people. And it gets really difficult to watch their content long term because it doesn't evolve. So it was really cool that you said that about, like, this next speaking gig, and you had spoke at it before, wanting to see what the people around you saw, from a growth standpoint in you, and that's what really mattered to you.
Mhm.
That's really cool. I think that's an amazing mentality for sure. Can you still hear me?
Oh, I got you.
All right. Yeah, but for me, like, what do you think the next steps are for you, growth wise? Because I know we're all still growing. Like, um, everybody talks about their wins. Like, what's one thing that is something that you're still getting improvement on, or needing improvement on?
Yeah, there's lots of areas this year, but the one that I've gone back to is just figuring out where the company needs me, right? So I report straight to our CEO and in charge of helping us grow. And we had the conversation the other day, and it was like, I need to go back and recruit more and help build out our realtor branch partnership and clarity. I think this is, for most people, this is where they struggle. I know in my own life,
Mhm.
this is where I've struggled in the past, is when you don't have clarity about your role, your responsibilities. This could be, by the way, in your relationship with your spouse. This could be how you define being a dad. This could be any area of your life. If you don't have clarity and a definition of what winning and success looks like, you're going to fail. You
Yeah.
will. And you're going to be frustrated, even if you have success and wins, that the outside world tells you, hey, Mike, you're winning. Ryan, man, you're doing such a great job. What I have been working on and learned is I need a clear scoreboard. I need to
Mhm.
understand what success looks like. And so I reverse engineered the whole thing, even in my scheduling, like my Sunday success planning. I talk to people all the time. When I changed that years ago and I started with my family and what we have, and my wife and I go through that, and we schedule our family stuff first, 3 kids, a lot of sports, travel sports, all this going on. I want to be at everything I possibly can. Doesn't mean I make it
Yeah.
100% of the time, but I want to be. Like, that's my desire. And so I look to make sure what's there. Then I move into my fitness to make sure those are scheduled. I don't want to think about it. I don't walk into a gym like, I don't know how people walk in and just they program their own stuff. They think they're getting a great workout. They work out at different times of the day. Like, for me, that doesn't work. I go to the same
Yeah.
class, same time, same deal every day. It's CrossFit style at Iron Tribe, and I love it. Well, then after I've gone through family, prioritizing my health and my fitness there, I'm making sure my prospecting. Okay, how many people am I talking to today? Points of contact. How many people do I need to talk to for me to achieve, like this year, $1 billion in growth? We just reverse engineer the whole thing. And I basically mathed it back down to 5 quality conversations a day. 5 quality conversations. That means actually talking to somebody on the other end of the phone. And so
Yeah.
I got so focused, and I will say hyper focused in a way, Mike, of like what actually drives the results and the desired outcome. Well, yes, speaking helps. Yes, doing the podcast helps. Yes, posting on social media helps. But those to me are all fillers in attracting people into my ecosystem. But what I know is if I don't have the conversations, I don't get the results. And so
Yeah.
for anybody listening, I got to share that with you. That's what I've been working on, is getting absolute clarity and simplifying it. So at the end of the day, did I achieve the goals and what I set out to do?
Right.
So yes or no. Like, it's really simple to measure myself. And look, I don't have to go out there and go, man, I'm not crushing it every day. I don't have a 24/7 hustle t-shirt on. I don't have any of that stuff. But what I do know is, with the time given and my priorities, I'm winning the game I'm playing. I'm winning my game. And
Yeah.
that's what matters to me.
Yeah, and I can. I mean, the age old saying of, comparison is the thief of joy. Is, something that I resonate with too. I think a lot of us get stuck in just comparing our routine to other people, and feeling like we're losing because our routine doesn't match what they view, like what that person might view as success. And I felt myself being in that place early on in my career of like, well, I'm not hitting those numbers, or I'm not. I'm not hitting the gym at 5 a.m. every day, or whatever it might be, whatever my litmus test at the time through my lens was of success, and I'm not hitting it, so I'm clearly losing. And I talked about this on another podcast of the micro wins. I'm going to start putting that on t-shirts. Micro wins matter,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of people, especially in our industries, whether it be real estate or mortgages, it's super easy to see everything as a loss, like everything as a losing battle, with rates being volatile and home sales dropping in certain areas, and all of these factors that like we really can't control, but we think we can. And for me, once I flip that mentality, and it all comes around perspective. Once I flip the mentality to counting the micro wins, then like
Right.
every day you feel like you won at something. Like maybe I didn't get that big sale, but I at least wanted this, and I wanted this, and I won today because I got better at answering my wife's phone calls, and so it's the little stuff that I think people just lose sight of, and I don't really understand why that is. I think I do, because I think from an evolutionary standpoint in our brains, like we're wired to see negative because that's what made us survive, and that's just it's just how we're wired. So we have to find ways to get ourselves to a place to where the micro wins matter more than the macro wins. Because you stack a bunch of those up, then ultimately you're gonna look around and go, hey, like my goal was to grow $1 billion in new growth, but I did 1.5 billion because I didn't focus on like
Yeah.
the billion every day wasn't the thing I was focused on. It was the 5 phone calls. Like that. That's when you really start leveling.
And I think our society is programmed is the instant gratification, and we want
Mhm.
it now. I mean, how many people? I was talking to somebody this morning at the gym, and they've been coming consistently this month, and they're surprised they haven't seen better results. And I'm like, you've been coming for a month. Just let's put it in perspective. One, give yourself some grace. Give yourself actually a pat on the back, because how many
Yeah.
times did you come when you didn't want to? Was my question.
Right.
Right. Oh man, I didn't want to be here today. Exactly. Guess what? Over time, you stack those wins and you do those little things of just showing up when you don't want to. This is,
Yeah.
I always say, is this one of my mentalities. When that shifted to win the day versus these big grandiose goals, I realized I can win the day, and not every day is going to be perfect. But if I can
Mhm.
design it in such a way that there's predictability and 80% of success happens, and I do it whether I feel like it or don't, and I put some goals and some things along the way, that's what matters. And what I
Yeah.
would tell people too, Mike, is like, I was having this conversation this morning. I've got a friend, his definition of success, like how he's defining success in his kind of health journey right now, is he's doing these cold plunges every day. We could debate those. Like there's studies and data that says you only really need it every other day, 3 to 4 times a week, kind of stuff. But he just said, look, I'm going to do it. It's really hard for me. I hate the cold. I'm going to do it every day.
Yeah.
Well, my metric is nothing to do with that. Like I'm watching my body fat, I'm watching certain lifts on my strength, and I'm looking at like my body fat index there and my skeletal muscle mass. Like that's how my scoreboard looks. Their scoreboard looks like if I do the cold plunge every day and they had a walking goal, I think like 10,000 steps, right? A day.
Yeah.
That's cool. Like your scoreboard looks different than my scoreboard based on what
Yeah.
we want at the end of the day. And so pick what matters to you, what's going to challenge you and move you closer to that best version of yourself. Like I have a vision of what the best version of Brian looks like, feels like, acts like, the people I'm around, all of these things. And so everything that I design should be in alignment with that and move
Yeah.
me towards that. Not I don't have a vision board with a private jet or yacht or any of this crazy stuff. Like that's
Yeah.
not even my jam. And so I think people need to own what success is and define it on your terms, and then relentlessly, man, pursue that every day. That's the
Yeah.
joy I find, is like that's the fun of competing.
Yeah. Yeah, like for me, my goals daily, like AI is crazy now and all these different things. So
Yeah.
I'm always trying to find ways and wins when it comes to like building that next webinar towards like driving that next value. And that's really like what has been filling my cup up over the last 2 years is the places where I can learn something new, then to be able to communicate it to somebody else. Like that's like my biggest litmus test right now in my professional career. And then in the personal life is just making sure that I'm maintaining a certain amount of health. making sure that my wife is staying happy, making sure that I'm present to my kids. And it's just crazy because like there are still people out there that will attack you for either production or whatever in our industries, and it's like, dude, like I'm not even worried about that right now. Like you're talking about all of that. Like I'm not worried about being the best mortgage company in my geographic location. You know, like I'm worried about like effectuating change and being hopefully the best. I'm at another mortgage company lower, but the best private label in the southeast. You know, like so my litmus test of my success is so much different than what some people in like maybe your geographic market might be basing that off of. And it's just it's really interesting to see all of that human dynamic over time. Like I really do study that. Not that like I'm studying other people, it's just like their reaction to me being in their bubble. Like I'm like very curious about like how people react to that. Because I'm one of those people that really love difficult conversations. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I think it's fun. So when somebody is very uncomfortable in that situation, it's like, hey, like why are you so uncomfortable right now? Like I'm here, like I'm face to face with you. Like why are we having this disagreement or whatever? So those are I guess my biggest takeaway of like what my litmus test for success would be right now is just how I react to certain situations and then growing from that. You know, I think a lot of uh, us men in particular, I think we have our egos. Like that's not going to go away. Everybody's got an ego in some sort of way. Is is how I allow that ego to react to people that um, may hurt me or may be praising me and um, how I go about that. So like if you could give anybody advice that's like early on in that journey of self-reflection, what are some of the ways that like you held yourself accountable to some of that kind of stuff? Like how do you kind of rein yourself back when you see that stuff going wrong?
I'll give you an acronym John Gordon shared. So, you know, John Gordon is
Mhm.
okay. Well, he talked about ego, and it stands for edging God out. Ego,
Yep.
edging God out. Whenever I feel my ego, which it happens, I over time recognize the patterns of when that starts to happen. And how you would know it starts to happen is you start to think about you. It's the me conversations. What's going to happen to me? You're not really thinking about other people in that. You're not looking at other
Yeah.
people's perspectives. You've lost the ability to be curious. You're not asking really good questions. You're so focused on getting your point across and winning that conversation or winning that dispute or battle or whatever it is that you would do anything and almost everything to win that moment. That's when you know your ego has taken over. Now, the same would be
Mhm.
true when you're speaking. Like I'm preparing for this speaking event this weekend, and I've been praying, like, God, what is the message? Like, clearly, you've chosen me as the messenger. I don't claim to have that all figured out. I'm going to show up and deliver whatever the message is. And I've been praying about the message, praying about the message. And I even changed it as of yesterday. We went through it. And I'm talking with one of my coaches. I'm like, based on who's going to be there, faith-based entrepreneurs, where they are, what I know the season has been like the last 18 to 24 months in all of our industries, especially financial services, real estate, mortgage. I really feel like this is the message and incorporating some anchors in there to help them based on my journey. So I think when you can look at that and you realize like anytime your ego starts to rise, I think people need something that's a pattern interrupt, like a
Yeah.
phrase to cling to, edging God out. The same's true, like, with my kids, they know we talk about this, we do hard things. They hear me talk about one of my coaches, talks about standards over feelings.
Mhm.
Whenever I feel my feelings start to come up, like, "I don't feel like doing that, I'd rather be doing this. I'd rather be doing that," and all that. I'm like, "Brian, is that your standard that you're listening to, or are those your feelings?"
Yeah.
And it's always my feelings are the ones that are leading me to a level of comfort, a level of not doing what I know I should be doing. And so I just share that with everybody so you know it's like you need these anchors in your life to remind yourself when you get in that moment, you need to be able to react quickly and go, you know what, this is what's happening. Cool. My standard is I'm going to show up and work out whether I feel like it or not. I may look at the workout and go, this looks lame. I don't want to do that. I don't like running. I mean, it's 40 degrees
Yeah.
outside. I don't want to go. Like your brain will trick you until you can get to a place. And I'll tell you, I continually look every day to put myself into battle, meaning I want to do hard things. Like every workout I go into, I compete at such a level that there's a point in almost every single workout, I can tell you, Mike, that I do want to quit. I do want to slow down. I want to go lighter on the weight. Like, let's be real. But I've found by doing that, and I do that early in the morning, that's my routine there, working out, is the rest of the day is like my confidence is up, I feel good, I've got more energy. And so I've just programmed that in a way to where my environment is conducive. And the last thing I'll tell you is you need to get around people that hold similar values and standards to you. So I'll tell you this quick little story is had a friend that was telling my wife, Brian, man, he's kind of extreme lately. Like he's treats himself like a high performing, like professional athlete. The way he's recovering and taking his supplements and he's working out every day. And I saw him out running the other day and it was like 30 degrees. And why is he doing all that stuff? And I can laugh with my wife, right? Because I do know guys like me and you, like I do know I'm wired just a little different.
Yeah, we got to screw loose for sure.
Yeah, I'm like, I was a goalkeeper. I get it. But unless you're doing things like that and holding yourself to a certain standard, I believe God gave me this one body, this one opportunity, the health that I have, and I'll be 48 this year. Is I don't want to look up at 60, 65, 70, if I'm fortunate enough to live that long. And I don't want to look back and go, man, I wish in my 40s I'd taken care of my health. I wish I wasn't
Yeah.
drinking. I wish I had slept better. I wish I'd. No, like I'm going to compete and do it now. So what a great compliment. So now the way I look at things, like you were sharing earlier, when people may throw a little shade, a little hate your way, I go, man, what a great compliment that somebody would go, man, Brian treats himself like a high performing athlete, like a professional athlete. Yeah, I do. That's how I look at myself. And while I recognize I'm not the best athlete in the world, I'm not the fastest, I'm not the strongest, I am going to treat myself that way. And the same in business. I'm going to hold myself to a standard that I want to be an elite leader and lead the team. And so I think that's how your mindset has to shift. And then your behaviors will back that up. And the standards have to be high enough to get you to that next level.
Yeah, and I think the standard piece is definitely a societal shift. Like for whatever reason, at some point we have decided to make a societal shift around zero accountability and zero standards. And it was something I talked about on another one before too. Is like for me, I tell my son and my daughter doesn't understand yet, but she'll hear it. Is that the Fitzpatrick way? Like, is that really how you're going to react to that situation? And at first, my wife went, "What? That's so weird. Don't say that." Like, Fitzpatrick way, that's a bizarre thing to say. I was like, "Well, but like back in the day, everybody would have their family crest and they would have these things where there was this immense amount of pride built around the SOP of the family, the standard operating procedure of the family. And somehow we've lost that. And like my whole goal in life is that from this generation to be a chain breaker for my son is when he starts teaching his kids, that's just it's a little gremlin in the back of his head where it's like, hey, that's not the Fitzpatrick way. That's not how we do things.
That's right.
And but you have to get yourself into a place to where you're holding those standards, which early on in my adult life, I wasn't. And that's been my main focus over the last 3 to 5 years is like, all right, well, if you're going to preach standards and you're going to say all these things and you're going to try to hold people accountable to this, and you're not doing that, like now I don't know another term for it, and I hope I don't offend anybody. Now you're backsliding Baptists, you know, and it's one of those things where it, it's so crazy how much my life shifted once I started actually just holding the line on certain standards, whether it be no, I'm not pushing your file for disclosures because the file's not ready and that's our standard, rather than doing it for somebody, or my daughter going through potty training right now. She's trying to get her pants down to go to the bathroom and she's just freaking out. And my wife is like, help her. I'm like, no, she's going to figure it out. I promise she will. I'm not going to do it for her in this moment because once she figures it out, that'll be her standard moving forward. She now she does it all on her own, and she's 2 years old. You know, so it's really cool to see, and that's what I love about this podcast is to see how similar perspectives can be for high achieving people and people that are growing and people that are doing bigger things than I am. And then vice versa. Maybe I'm doing something bigger than somebody else, but being able to invest in each other's lives in a way through a podcast medium like this. I mean, just how crazy is this that we're sitting here, you're in a completely different state, I'm sitting in Myrtle Beach,
Yeah,
and we get to converse and like invest in each other and in other people's lives. I think we live in a very golden age right now. Maybe society's doing something weird, but for us, I think that we've got platforms where we can really help a lot of people and really change a lot of lives, as long as we don't let our ego creep in and make it all about us.
agreed. Agreed. I have a
Yeah.
friend when you were saying that, and 2 and 6 years old with the kids. I'll tell you, a 9-year-old. He's playing basketball right now. He's got soccer as well, but basketball is one of the sports. And my friend came up with this slogan. He's got T-shirts and hats and all that, and it's "Touch the line." So we were at practice a couple weeks ago. My son was mad because lost one of the races, right? And I said, "Hey, buddy, what did I tell you about this? We touch the line. We don't cheat the line. You
Mhm.
touch the line every time. You give it your best effort. If somebody beats you fairly, they beat you, which means you got to work harder. You got to figure it all that. But our standard within that is you give it your best effort. You have a great attitude, but you always touch the line. And it's one of those
Mhm.
things. Even at 9, he knows, and he'll tell me, he's like, "Dad, not everybody touched the line." I go, "That's okay. That's okay." Hey, man, you may go over to him afterward and say, "Hey, on our team, we touch the line. Be a leader. Step up. Like lead
Yeah.
them." But your example by touching the line every time. So what I know is that kid that shortchanges the line, it doesn't touch it, they know they cut it short. They know
Mhm.
that they might have won that little race in that moment, but did they really win? And so we share little things like that. And as your kids get older, share that story because there's always teachable moments. There's always things in
Mhm.
the mortgage side, right? Like you could take that into mortgage and talk to people about how filling out your 1003, how doing this disclosure timely, how getting out, numbers timely, like all these things. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Other people might shortcut it. They might say they're faster. They might do this faster, but we're going to do it in such a high quality, elite way that we know what we're delivering is quality. And I
Yeah.
think that's the lessons you want as you go over time because look, he's going to have that and be running that one day. Like I'm not going to be there.
Yeah.
He needs to know that's what we do.
Yeah, and we've all with our sports background, I mean, through the years, I'm sure you have still a coach to this day that when you do something, that voice is like in the back of your head, and you're like, "Dang!" Like that. One for me is a guy named Jerry Nettles. He was like the first Citadel quarterback to ever win the Orange Bowl for Citadel, and he was this little old guy, and he drilled into us as a quarterback. Think about your feet, then think about your shoulders, then like so he had this saying, and for me, like there's these little life moments where Jerry Nettles rings into my head, and I'm like, oh, that's so weird. Like, and that's my only hope is, and I know that you've got a voice, and I hope to have a platform that grows over time. Is like, I would love to put a lot of my life experiences out there, so somebody that hits that experience that they heard on some of the content that I post, they go, "Oh, I heard this somewhere. I know that I'm not going to do that." Like,
That's
and the same thing for my kid, like being able to be that little gremlin in the head later in life where they hear dad's voice and it's like, oh, okay, yeah. All right. I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't touch that drug. I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't do this. Like it's really cool to have that ability to have that kind of power. But like Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibilities.
right.
So it's cool to see other people kind of taking up that mantle and understanding the gravity of that. And I think interactions from person to person, I think too many people take those flippantly and don't understand the power of that interaction and how that could change somebody's life, just even in the smallest way, like road rage. I don't do the road rage thing anymore. I've had to I've had to get myself out of that. Or a server, you're being served at a restaurant, and that you can clearly see that server's having a terrible day. But then to not understand that like you could have some power in that interaction, and but you're just going to turn into a turd and make that person have an even worse day. I just don't think people understand the gravity of that, and it's clear that you do, and it's really cool to see that. So if for people that are uh dealing with maybe the anger type of thing and the lashing out in certain situations, even when you're wronged, how do you approach a situation like that? What is your go-to method Is it a deep breath? Is it like what it I'm always interested to see how people handle the really tough interactions where somebody's clearly being an a-hole to you or clearly um saying bad things about you. Like what is your go-to as far as handling that? I think I know, but it's good for
Yeah.
people to hear it.
Well, probably as a man, I'll be the first one to admit, like as an athlete, like I had a raging temper as a teenager and
Same.
was not the best on the field, so competitive to a fault that I hated losing. I still hate losing, by the way. I just,
Yeah, it
it's
sucks.
not how I'm wired. I don't do well with that. But those kind of emotional and anger things, I think it's always what I've looked back on is there was always something within me that was just flawed and broken. I think that's why I know you'll relate to this, but it's why we need a savior. It's why we need Jesus. It's like I'm not perfect and I know that. And the more time I can spend realizing that and that I do need somebody that can actually take all the flawed mess that Brian is and go, okay, cool, we're gonna take all that and we're still gonna do something with you. And I'll tell you from a tactical standpoint, as I started to realize these patterns, and I had a coach, gosh, 7 or 8 years ago, and this is one of the things we actually worked on. It's like being frustrated with team members or being frustrated with myself, coming home and being frustrated because you got this and this going on and all this. And he's like, "Hey, I want you just to be mindful of the next week, like the patterns, like when you get mad, and recognize in the moment, like why are you mad?"
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, for most people, I realized it wasn't what was happening then. I wasn't really even present. Number one, in the moment. And so I'm mad because I think I should be doing something else. Somebody's saying something to me that I don't want to deal with that right now. Like I think it's not important. And you go through all these just reasons of what's happening. What I started to realize is like not being present is the number one thing, whether it's with your kids, with your spouse, with your team, with your customer that you're talking to. When you're not present, you're going to have this tendency. I noticed, at least a pattern for me, is I wanted to be somewhere else, or I thought something else was more important. Thus, I wasn't in the moment. And so I got really frustrated
Mm.
where I was because I'm like, well, I need to be going and doing this. Like, I need to go make the sales call. I need to follow up. I mean, this customer needs to call him back. And like, you're bothering me with this issue. And so
Yeah.
when you recognize the patterns, I'll tell you what helped me. Just a very simple 3, 2, 1, and breathe. Like
Yeah.
take a moment and pause. I had a conversation last week, got a little heated with somebody, and I just shut up. It's quiet. I said, "Hey,
Yeah.
what what would you have me do? What do you want me to do? Just be quiet." I think there's power in that pause. And when somebody you're talking to, if you want like tactical stuff, is breathe and you're like, good deep breath will reset you.
Yeah.
If you're in the moment though, and you're with somebody in person, like you can't walk away, maybe the deep breath might kind of weird. That's okay
Yeah.
too.
It comes off bizarre.
Comes off kind of weird, like, but they can kind of tell what's there. There is a guy I follow, Jefferson Fisher, phenomenal attorney, and he shares some things there. Follow the FBI negotiator, Chris Voss is great. So I've studied some people to help me with this, and what I've realized is there's things that you can say in those moments, and
Yeah.
it's very much like what I would share if you were watching and somebody gets angry. It's not too different than bullying and things. Like when there's this power play,
Mm.
it's the person that actually lowers their emotion and is calm and asks the question. And if somebody comes at you, give a great example. Somebody comes at you and you're like, "Hey, Mike, you screwed this up. How could you do this? How could you do that?"
Yeah.
If you can own it and go, "Man, you know what? You're right. Can't believe I screwed that up. That's not what I intended to do. I'd like to fix it and make it right. What would you have us do? What can we do?"
Yeah. Yeah, because people's, I think, initial reaction is always like, "Let me throw up a bunch of excuses as to why this happened."
100%. And that's going to
Yeah,
escalate it.
yeah, and then it goes from like, "All right, this is about to get resolved," to like, and that more happens, I think, in in marriages than probably professional
Yes.
face-to-face conversations, but, it can definitely happen in a professional sense, and I think the power of asking a question in those moments completely changes the dynamic in a really tough situation. It's like,
Yeah.
"Hey, what led you to the place of making the decision like this on this file? Or what led you to the place of maybe calculating the income this way, and now you got a file blowing up in your face?" But,
Yeah.
like, what led you to this place? And let them kinda speak and go through that, and then ultimately be like, "Hey, totally understand where you're coming from here. I totally get it. Here's kind of where things went a little bit awry, or totally understand. I think you're 100% right, and I think there's definitely places I could get better at, and I apologize that that's hurt you. My only ask moving forward is that we kind of squash this from here on out, and that we move forward as in a positive way. It just the power of like asking that person to speak and then actually shutting up and listening. um, because like
Yeah.
they may be just angry with you, and like you said, a lot of the times you were getting angry. It wasn't for a specific reason that like maybe even that person, but your brain's over here, and we're high achievers, so we're like wanting to make everybody happy at one time. And then you end up getting frustrated with that person, and they're not even really the cause of it. And yeah, I would agree. I think the power of questioning after you can feel yourself getting really upset with somebody, will give yourself time to think, but it also make them feel valued enough to where they calm down at the same time. It's like, I understand that you're upset with me. Can you tell me more about that? Like what's causing you to be this upset with me? And then just let them vent. Just let them go. And the power behind that is, and the same thing, like that's a great way to handle really tough situations. It's also a great way to sell too.
Mhm.
Um, and be able to figure out what's actually important to somebody, so you're not over explaining something to somebody that like you're going to explain a bunch of stuff as a loan officer that they really don't care about. They just wanted you to tell you what the payment was. Like they
Yeah.
you're over here explaining FHA and VA and all these different things, and they really just wanted to know what their payment was going to be and what they were going to bring to closing. And so some people, the explaining of the stuff, it's really important. But for a lot of people, it's not. And if you don't sit and listen long enough, you're going to miss the boat in that situation. So that's
Yeah.
great advice. I think,
Back to back to the
yeah,
communication. I'll give you the one little tip since you got kids and anybody that's listening that has kids. Is this was shared from a mentor, so I did not come up with this, but he would often ask me. He's like, "Hey, Brian, anything you're doing, if your kids were to be around you and watching and observing you, right? Like working out, are you putting forth the most effort when you're with clients and you're out at these events? Are you representing yourself to the best of
mm,
yourself? All these things. When you get angry, maybe that road rage thing that comes up. Like if your kids were in there, like how would you act differently if you knew that
yeah,
little one was watching you?" And so a couple times, I
yeah,
mean, that's been a trigger for me. It's like when I feel myself getting mad or angry or something like that, and it's like, if my kids were to see this or something bad were to happen, like how dumb would that be? Like, and I
yeah,
just go, Brian, that's dumb. Like, look, we're going to choose a different route. So I just share that for my as kids is you can use that. I mean, I use that oftentimes. Like, man, if my kids ask me after school, like my little one would be the one that asks, "Hey, Dad, how was your workout today?" And I'm like, "Oh man, I didn't go today."
mm,
No, thank you.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, just
Kids
I
have
have
a way of holding you accountable to that stuff
to
too. Like,
self-imposed accountability on some of that, right? But I like to kind of gamify things. Like Michael Jordan did that, right? Like he would
yeah,
create villains that never really even hated him or said these things about him. But sometimes you just got to create that adversary and like that little bit of tension in your life so that the best of you can perform and come out.
yeah. Do you ever have a situation with your kids where you see a behavior trait that's clearly learned from you, and you just go, oh crap.
Well, my
Yeah,
little one is my mini me, and,
yeah,
so some things we talked about today, like dealing with losses, right? Like he's a high competitor, plays God knows how many sports now, and so gets frustrated when he's trying to learn something and he's not great at it right away. You know, even this morning, like we're
mhm,
working on some dribbling and he's in basketball season, right? So we're going between the legs and around the back, and I'm showing him that stuff, and I just keep reminding him every time. It's like, hey, this is how we learn. Nobody woke
yeah,
up at 9 years old and goes, you know what? I'm going to dribble through my legs and around my back and like both hands and I'm assuring you, nobody figured it out even in a practice. Like we
yeah,
could sit here for 20 or 30 minutes. And my goal for today is that you just get a little bit better, just a little bit
yeah,
better than when you came in there. And so just reminding him of that, I think that's true for all of us is like when I started speaking on stages or I started doing the podcast, is I look back and I go, man, like I still got a long way to go, but I sure have come a long way too. And so just
yeah,
sharing that with him is, and I even tell him from time to time, like, Mike, I go, hey, dude, I struggle with this. Like I'm like you. I want to be able to just walk out on the field or the court and just figure it out and just do it.
Yeah.
Not how life works. But the hard work you put in now, the improvements you make, and I always remind them of this is it's probably people that you're going to play against this weekend on Saturday. They're not putting in that 20, 30-minute session that you are right now. This is extra. This is the
Mhm.
unrequired stuff. Like you did training last night with your team, right? You practiced for over an hour. Good for you. This is where champions are made. Like you're coming out and
Yeah.
doing an extra 30 minutes with your dad in the morning. Don't you think you're going to get better? He's like, yeah, yeah. And so, and I'll give you this last little tip of it is just through my coaching and like my own experiences. Make sure as you're learning new things, we program in things that he's already great at, right? Like, so we're working on layups, we're working on close shots.
Yeah.
And so you just kind of mix those in. I'm like, okay, cool. 2 minutes between the leg dribbling. After that, we're going to shoot 20 baskets underneath. Okay, coming back,
Yeah.
2 minutes. We're going to work on around, behind our back, all this kind of stuff. That for me, I think that's where people miss today is your brain needs to work and feel success and momentum and then program in something that you want to learn.
Yeah.
Too oftentimes we say, well, I'm just going to go in, I'm just going to learn this like an AI piece. I'm just going to go all in. I'm just going to learn it. And along the way, you got to keep doing other things you're successful at. So you are feeling that success and then
Yeah.
program in the new stuff. I think that would be my advice. I use that psychology behind that. My dad,
Yeah.
being a psychologist, some of those things, I just like to know how the brain works. And that's how the brain
Same.
works.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, those micro wins matter. I mean, it's
Yep.
those things that you keep programmed in your day, whether they're monotonous or dumb or whatever, just so you can stack up a couple of wins in order to make sure that that brain stays healthy enough to fight through the heavy loss
That's right.
of certain things. I agree. But man, dude, like I'm so grateful that you came on. I'm so excited for the things that we're going to do content wise long term together, and glad that we align in the sense that my philosophy is always I'm going to give without the expectation of receiving anything.
Yeah.
And that's the whole premise behind the podcast, and kind of how I'm living my life that way, and I'm glad we align on that, and I think we're going to be talking about that in the upcoming weeks. And yeah, man, it's exciting. I really believe this is one of the most exciting times to be alive,
Yeah.
and a great time for people like us to be able to cut through the noise and be a lighthouse in some really perceived darkness,
That's right.
and be that driving force. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, what are your social media handles, and how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, great one. So I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. So you can find Brian Covey over there. Pretty easy to find. And then on all the socials, somebody already had my name, which is kind of funny. So I had to do the Brian Covey. So that way it could
Yep.
be universal on all the platforms. And so I'm on Instagram, spend some time there. Facebook, I'll spend some time there. The other platforms, we put some YouTube and all that. But message me. Let me know if this has resonated. I always love, man, I'll tell you what, Mike's like, I love when somebody listens to a show like this. I'm like, hey, I was inspired or encouraged to go do
Yep.
this and this is what I'm doing. Please don't think that we don't care. Like those are the best stories is that's why we have these conversations is we're not that different than probably the people listening to this. And if it's
Yep.
something that we've been able to learn or acquire along the way, man, let us know that it's impacted you.
Yeah, and we're both cut of the same cloth. Like we do stay social on social media. We're not just we're
Yeah.
not just bots sitting out there. Like, it's something I preach a lot about. Is if you're getting a response from me, it's actually coming from me. And I think
Yep.
being social on social media is important. And yeah, definitely reach out. Brian is definitely one of those people that is a good person that will listen to you. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. And don't forget, the legendary project is, please share this, because the premise behind this is these 52 episodes of this year are going to propel the foundation that I am launching in 2026 called the Live Legendary Foundation, which is going to be focusing on fighting for at-risk kids, primarily focused on sexual exploitation and trafficking. And that's something that I have a big passion behind, and I know Brian's a father, and definitely resonates with him. So if you can, the only fee that I have, similar to what Andy Frisella says all the time, is the only fee that I've got is to share, and hopefully we can reach some people, and this will be a good springboard to help a lot of kids in the future. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.